The scent of sugary popcorn mingled with the thrilling roar of the Dragon's Breath roller coaster, painting a perfect summer morning at Wonderland Park. Laughter bubbled up from every corner, echoing the joyful screams of children as the carousel spun its kaleidoscope of colors. It was a symphony of delight, a place where, for just a few precious hours, the world's worries faded into the vibrant hues of cotton candy and sun-drenched dream. Amongst this vibrant tapestry of joy, Sarah, a woman whose smile could outshine the brightest summer day, navigated her wheelchair with quiet determination. In her late 30s, with eyes that held both the wisdom of experience and the gentle glow of expectant motherhood, Sarah was in the delicate final stages of a complicated pregnancy. Every movement was a thoughtful effort, but today her focus was entirely on the whirlwind of energy that was her son, Leo. He darted ahead, a streak of pure excitement, then looped back, his face alight with the promise of the cosmic wheel, their ultimate destination. This day was meant to be a sanctuary, a moment of pure magic before their family grew. Her husband, David, a federal agent whose calm demeanor belied a Steelmeyer resolve, had promised to join them later, as soon as his urgent work concluded. Until then, Sarah was the captain of their little ship of adventure, determined that Leo's day would be nothing less than perfect. She envisioned his squeals of delight on the rides, the sticky sweetness of ice cream on his chin, the simple, unburdened joy of a child at play. This was the kind of day that etched itself into the heart, a memory to cherish. But as they approached the Harmony Gate, the designated accessible entrance, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift began to ripple through the air. A figure stood by the gate, Officer Thorne. Not just middle-aged and broad-shouldered, but with an unnerving stillness about him. His gaze, unblinking and devoid of warmth, seemed to bore right through Sarah, lingering with an intensity that made the hairs on the back of her neck prickle. His arms were crossed, a barrier before he'd even uttered a word, and the air around him seemed to thicken, heavy with an unspoken judgment. This wasn't just a guard, this was a wall. And in that moment, the dream of a perfect day began to fray at the edges, a chilling premonition whispering through the vibrant hum of Wonderland. They were about to discover that even in a place built for happiness, some dreams are destined to shatter. Not by accident, but by design. The smile on Sarah's face, usually so bright, faltered as she approached Officer Thorne. "Excuse me, officer," she began, her voice gentle. "We're just trying to get to the accessible entrance. My son, Leo, is so excited for the rides." She extended a folder, neatly organized with her medical documents. It contained a letter from her doctor, clearly outlining her late-stage pregnancy complications and the necessity of her wheelchair. Thorne didn't move, his eyes remaining fixed on her with that unsettling intensity. He didn't even glance at the folder, his arms still stubbornly crossed. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" he drawled, his voice flat, devoid of any warmth. "This area is for people who actually need it." The words hit Sarah with the force of a physical blow. Actually need it? Was her pain, her undeniable reality, somehow invisible to him? She felt a familiar sting of indignity, a feeling she knew all too well as a black woman navigating a world that often questioned her very existence. Am I not actually needing it? Is my pain invisible simply because I'm not screaming it from the rooftops? A quick glance at Leo, whose bright eyes were beginning to cloud with confusion, spurred her to maintain her composure. "Yes, officer, I assure you," Sarah replied, her voice firmer now, pushing past the initial shock. "I'm 9 months pregnant and have complications that require me to use a wheelchair. All my medical documentation is right here." She pushed the folder forward again. This time, Thorne merely scoffed, a dismissive sound that curdled in the cheerful park air. "Anyone can get a doctor's note, ma'am," he said, his tone dripping with thinly veiled contempt. We've had a lot of people trying to take advantage of the system lately." He still hadn't touched the folder. The implication hung heavy in the air. She was a fraud, a burden, just another person trying to game the system. This wasn't just about a wheelchair anymore. It was about a deeply ingrained skepticism, a judgment rooted in something far more insidious. For Sarah, this wasn't an isolated incident. It was a painful echo of a lifetime of being doubted, of having to prove her worth, her pain, her very humanity. As the standoff dragged on, the joyous sounds of the park began to recede, replaced by a growing murmur from the small crowd that had started to gather. Curious glances morphed into concerned stares. Sarah felt the heat of humiliation creeping up her neck, but a simmering anger began to replace it. This man, with his unquestioning bias, was not just denying her access, he was publicly shaming her, treating her like a criminal. "You're—" Thorne, seemingly oblivious to the gathering unease, reached for his radio. "I think I'm going to have to call this in," he announced, his voice carrying just enough to be heard by the growing crowd. "Better to be safe." A cold dread snaked its way through Sarah. She'd read the headlines, seen the viral videos. She knew how quickly a routine encounter, especially for someone who looked like her, could spiral out of control. A simple request for an accessible entrance was now about to become a full-blown confrontation, and she was trapped in her chair, exposed and vulnerable. This perfect day was already cracking, but the worst was yet to come, and the dream of Wonderland was rapidly dissolving into a nightmare. The joyous sounds of Wonderland Park, once a soothing backdrop, were abruptly shattered by the chilling wail of sirens. A police cruiser, its lights flashing with an ominous urgency, sliced through the cheerful crowds, pulling up abruptly near the Harmony Gate. The crowd, which had moments ago been merely curious, now shifted, a ripple of unease turning into outright apprehension. Officer Steele emerged from the cruiser, broad-shouldered and imposing, his face set in an expression of grim impatience. His eyes, initially sweeping over the scene with a detached air, quickly landed on Sarah and Thorne. Thorne, scenting his ally's arrival, immediately leaned in, whispering a hurried, biased account of Sarah's supposed uncooperativeness. Steele's eyes hardened as he listened, his gaze now settling on Sarah with a cold, piercing intensity that sent shivers down her spine. "Ma'am, I've been told there's a problem here," Steele began, his voice deep and authoritative, devoid of any empathy. "A concern about the legitimacy of your need for this entrance." He didn't ask, he stated, his tone already accusatory. Sarah felt a wave of despair. This wasn't just another guard. This was the law, and it was clearly on Thorne's side. "Officer, I've tried to explain," Sarah interjected, her voice trembling slightly despite her efforts to control it. She again extended her medical folder, the papers a flimsy barrier against the towering authority before her. "I have documentation here. I'm 9 months pregnant, and I have complications that require this wheelchair." Steele, however, waved a dismissive hand, not even bothering to glance at the folder. "Anyone can get a doctor's note, ma'am," he scoffed, his words mirroring Thorne's earlier contempt, but with the added weight of official power. "You'll have to do better than that." Thorne, emboldened by Steele's agreement, chimed in, "See? Just like I said, officer. She's just trying to cause trouble." Then came the demand that froze Sarah's blood. A demand so dehumanizing it felt like a slap across her face. "If that's the case," Steele commanded, his voice growing louder, drawing more attention from the now silent crowd, "then why don't you stand up and show me that you really need that chair?" The words hung in the air, a cruel, impossible challenge. "Stand up," her body screamed in protest at the very thought. The swelling, the pressure, the sharp pangs in her back, it was all real, agonizingly real. How could she possibly perform her pain for these men? The humiliation burned, a hot, bitter flush. She was being reduced to a spectacle, her suffering deemed insufficient without a physical demonstration. This wasn't just an officer being unreasonable. It was an officer actively demanding she endanger herself, challenging her very reality, all because she didn't look disabled enough. I cannot, Sarah pleaded, her voice cracking. It's dangerous. I have serious complications. My doctor explicitly said. But Steele cut her off, his face contorting into a mask of cold fury. I'm starting to think you're just trying to cause a scene, ma'am, he snarled, his hand hovering menacingly over his sidearm, then dropping to his cuffs. If you don't cooperate, you could be charged with obstructing an investigation. The glint of metal sent a fresh wave of terror through Sarah. Obstruction, a nebulous charge so often used to silence and control, to escalate a non-issue into a criminal offense. Leo, who had been clinging to Sarah's side, now let out a small, choked sob. "Mommy, what's happening?" he whispered, his small voice thick with fear. "Are they going to take you away?" His innocent question, laced with pure, unadulterated terror, ripped through Sarah's carefully constructed composure. Her son, her unborn child, they were both caught in this cruel, nonsensical drama. Steele, seemingly unfazed by Leo's distress, pressed his advantage, delivering the ultimate gut-wrenching threat. "If you don't comply," he said, his voice chillingly calm now, "we may have to take measures to ensure both your safety and his. That could include taking him into custody." The world tilted. Take Leo into custody? Her precious son for her inability to prove her disability? A surge of primal fear, a protective instinct fierce enough to move mountains, coursed through her. Her hands instinctively gripped the wheels of her chair, knuckles white. The dream of Wonderland was now a full-blown nightmare, and she was cornered, utterly alone, with her greatest fear hanging over her head. Just as despair threatened to consume her, a distant sound cut through the chaos. A familiar slam of a car door, faint but distinct. It was a sound that, in a different life, would have been ordinary. But today, it held a desperate flicker of hope. Just as Sarah's heart was about to shatter, just as the chilling threat of Leo being taken away threatened to swallow her whole, a sound, distinct even amidst the lingering park noises, cut through the suffocating tension. A car door slammed with a resonant thud, followed by the unmistakable, rapid thud, thud, thud of determined footsteps. "David!" Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes wide with fear and a burgeoning hope fixed on the approaching figure. David, he was here. Her husband, her rock, was racing towards them, his face a mask of furious concern as he took in the scene. Officer Steele's menacing posture, Thorne's smug sneer, Leo's tear-streaked face, and her own white-knuckled grip on her wheelchair. Every pounding beat of David's heart echoed Sarah's own, a silent scream of, "What have they done to my family?" His vision narrowed, the colorful park fading into a blurry backdrop for the escalating injustice unfolding before him. The urge to shield them, to lash out at the men tormenting his wife and child, was almost overwhelming. For a fleeting second, his training as a federal agent, the meticulous calculations of protocol and procedure, warred with the primal roar of a husband and father. The primal roar won. What in God's name is going on here? David's voice, usually calm and measured, was now a thunderclap, cutting through the stunned silence that had fallen over the growing crowd. Officer Steele, caught mid-threat, spun around, his expression hardening as he took in the sight of a civilian daring to interrupt his authority. He dismissed David with a condescending flick of his hand. "Stay back, sir. This is a police matter." "Sure." "Police matter?" David roared, his eyes blazing. "That's my wife. What manner involves you harassing a pregnant woman in a wheelchair and terrifying a child?" His gaze shifted to Leo, who was now clinging to Sarah, sobbing uncontrollably. The sight ignited a fresh wave of protective fury in David. "What kind of officers are you?" Steele, fueled by a mixture of arrogance and the false sense of security that came from his uniform, puffed out his chest. You're interfering with an official investigation, sir. I suggest you step back before you find yourself in cuffs for obstruction." His partner, Thorne, now fully in his element, moved to flank David, ready to make an arrest. The air crackled with tension. The crowd murmured louder, their collective disapproval growing tangible. David knew, in that split second, that he was at a crossroads. He could continue to argue, to appeal to reason that clearly wasn't present, or he could play his ace. The thought was a bitter one. Revealing his identity in such a public, volatile situation was a risk, a breach of his usual low profile. But looking at Sarah's pale, tear-stained face, at Leo's trembling body, he knew he had no choice. Protecting his family superseded all other protocols. As Steele's partner lunged forward, reaching for David's arm, Steele himself, emboldened by the perceived weakness of a mere civilian, shoved David hard. It was a vicious, unexpected push that sent David stumbling backward. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Leo's cry, "Daddy, don't let them take you!" echoed through the park, a sound that twisted David's gut. But that shove, that single arrogant act, was Steele's undoing. It ignited a cold, calculated fury in David. With a sudden, explosive burst of strength, he broke free from the impending cuffs. His hand shot to his jacket, pulling out his badge with lightning speed. He held it high, the glint of the polished shield catching the sunlight, the letters FBI starkly visible. "I am a federal agent," David declared, his voice ringing with an undeniable authority that cut through the chaos like a knife. The words hung in the air, a chilling pronouncement. Steele's face, a moment ago flushed with righteous anger, drained of all color. His partner froze, hand still outstretched. The crowd fell into an immediate, stunned silence. The power dynamic, which had been so brutally one-sided, shattered, sending shockwaves through the air. The law had arrived, but not in the way anyone had expected. Officer Steele's face, a moment ago bloated with self-importance, now crumpled into a mask of shock, then quickly contorted with wounded pride. "I don't care who you are," he spat, attempting to regain control of the crumbling situation. "Your badge doesn't give you a free pass to interfere with a lawful arrest." He still insisted on his twisted version of reality, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Thorne, standing beside him, was pale, his eyes darting nervously between David's badge and the rapidly growing, increasingly agitated crowd. The whispers from the onlookers had erupted into shouts of outrage. "He's an FBI agent!" someone yelled. "They were harassing a pregnant woman!" another voice boomed. Phones were everywhere, their lenses glinting, recording every agonizing second. Steele, desperate to assert dominance, actually reached for Sarah's wheelchair, as if to drag her away. Just then, the wail of approaching sirens grew deafening, and two more patrol cars skidded to a halt. From the lead car emerged Sergeant Ramirez, a man with a stern but thoughtful face, his eyes immediately assessing the volatile scene. He took in the furious federal agent, the cowering local officers, the terrified woman in the wheelchair, and the sobbing child. Then, his gaze landed on Sarah's visibly pregnant belly. "What in God's name is going on here, Steele?" Ramirez's voice, though calm, cut through the tension with a chilling authority. He saw the badges, the crowd, the recording phones, and the raw fear in Sarah's eyes. David, ever the agent, seized the moment. His voice, though still tinged with fury, was now precise, authoritative, detailing every offense. "Sergeant," he began, "I am Agent David Miller, FBI. These officers, Thorne and Steele, have been harassing my wife, Sarah Miller, a pregnant woman with complications requiring a wheelchair. They refused to accept her medical documentation, demanded she prove her disability by standing up, threatened her with obstruction of justice, and Officer Steele," David's voice hardened, "just threatened to take my son into custody." He pointed to Leo, who was now clinging to Sarah, his face buried in her side. He even shoved me when I tried to intervene. The crowd erupted in a roar of affirmation. "It's true! We saw it all! They're pegs!" The sheer volume of public outrage, combined with David's calm, irrefutable testimony and the glaring evidence of Sarah's condition, visibly unnerved Sergeant Ramirez. His gaze hardened on Steele, who now looked like a trapped animal. "Are you arresting a pregnant woman, Steele?" Sergeant Ramirez's voice was low, dangerous. The implication hung heavy. This was not just a violation of rights, but a public relations disaster of epic proportions, already being recorded for the world to see. Steele stammered, unable to form a coherent reply, his bravado utterly deflated. "Sergeant," David continued, his voice resonating with a deeper meaning now, a lesson for everyone present. "This is precisely why people lose faith. This is why communities don't trust the police. When those sworn to protect and serve act with this kind of arrogance, this kind of disregard for basic human dignity, it doesn't just harm individuals. It erodes the very fabric of our society. It damages trust, it fuels resentment. And today, you witnessed it firsthand." His words were a direct challenge to the institution, a powerful indictment of systemic issues. Sergeant Ramirez, his face grim, turned to Steele and Thorne. "Officers, stand down," he commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Both of you, now." He then turned to David and Sarah. "Agent Miller, Mrs. Miller, you are free to go. A full report will be filed on this incident." David met Ramirez's gaze, his resolve unyielding. "You do that, Sergeant," he stated, his voice a promise and a threat. "And I'll be filing a report of my own. I'll make damn sure this goes up the chain and that everyone involved faces the consequences of their actions. This isn't over." The immediate crisis was averted, the immediate danger lifted, but the true battle for justice, a battle against systemic prejudice and unchecked power, had only just begun. This wasn't just about a park visit gone wrong. It was about the shifting sands of power, and David and Sarah were ready to make them move. The moment David's badge flashed, the private nightmare at Wonderland Park exploded onto the national stage. Within hours, the videos recorded by the stunned bystanders, already swirling across social media, went viral. "Federal agent confronts police for acting pregnant wife," screamed headlines across major news outlets. "Wonderland incident sparks outrage over police conduct," echoed countless online forums. Sarah's humiliation was now amplified 1,000-fold, replayed on screens across the country. But so too was the irrefutable evidence of the injustice. The trauma, though, wasn't just confined to the screen. Sarah, despite David's unwavering support, struggled. The constant replay of the incident in her mind, the feeling of vulnerability, the gnawing anxiety for her unborn child. It was a heavy burden. There were nights she woke in a cold sweat, reliving Steele's menacing threats, the fear in Leo's eyes. Yet, beneath the pain, a steel-hard resolve began to form. This wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had ever been doubted, dismissed, or dehumanized by those in power. David, true to his word, wasted no time. He immediately reached out to Elena Rodriguez, a brilliant civil rights lawyer and a trusted old friend, whose reputation for fighting systemic injustice was legendary. Elena, upon seeing the raw footage and hearing David's calm, precise account, was incandescent with outrage. "This isn't just misconduct, David," she stated, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "This is a gross violation of civil rights, magnified by prejudice. We're going to make them pay." Their first step was filing formal complaints, meticulously detailing every minute of the incident, corroborated by witness statements that poured in from the park. The public outcry was a powerful ally. A local civil rights organization, deeply affected by Sarah's story, quickly reached out. They proposed a rally, a public outcry at City Hall, not just for Sarah, but for all those who had suffered similar injustices. Weeks later, under a sky that mirrored the fierce determination in their hearts, hundreds gathered. The steps of City Hall were transformed into a sea of signs. Justice for Sarah. End police brutality. We stand with you. The air vibrated with a shared sense of purpose. When David stepped to the podium, the crowd roared its support. His voice, calm yet resonating with an undeniable power, filled the square. He recounted their ordeal, not just as a personal tragedy, but as a stark example of a larger, insidious problem. What happened to my wife, to my son, was not an isolated incident, David declared, his gaze sweeping over the faces in the crowd. It is a symptom of a deeper sickness, a sickness of prejudice, of unchecked power, of a system that too often fails to see the humanity in those it's sworn to protect. Today, we stand here not just for Sarah, but for every person who has been belittled, disbelieved, or brutalized because of the color of their skin, or because they looked different, or because they simply dared to exist in a space where they were deemed unwelcome. A hush fell over the crowd as Leo, clutching Sarah's hand, unexpectedly stepped forward. His small voice, though shy, carried an undeniable purity. "Daddy," he asked, looking up at David, "are they going to make that mean man go away?" And then, to Sarah's astonishment, and David's deep pride, Leo added, his voice gaining strength, "I want to help too when I grow up, so no one has to be scared anymore." A wave of emotion, a mix of tears and cheers, swept through the crowd. In that moment, a child's innocence had articulated the very core of their fight to dismantle fear and build a world where dignity was a birthright, not a privilege. Months crawled by. The legal battle was grueling, a relentless back and forth of motions, depositions, and public scrutiny. Officer Steele, facing immense pressure and overwhelming evidence from the viral videos and witness testimonies, was eventually stripped of his badge. He was arrested, and formal charges for abuse of power and misconduct were filed. The trial was a public spectacle, a crucible where the truth, often obscured by authority, was finally laid bare. As the verdict was read, guilty of abuse of power and misconduct, a collective sigh of relief, heavy with emotion, rippled through the courtroom. David squeezed Sarah's hand, a silent acknowledgement of the weight that had finally lifted from their chests. It wasn't a complete victory. The systemic issues ran deeper than one corrupt officer. But it was a profound validation. It was proof that their fight, their courage, had meant something. Outside the courthouse, the crowd, now a jubilant throng, erupted in celebration. David and Sarah stood together, their hands intertwined, looking out over the faces of those who had supported them, their journey a testament to the power of unwavering resolve. They knew there was still so much work to be done, so many battles ahead, but they also knew, unequivocally, that they had the strength and the community to keep pushing forward, together. And their story was a beacon, a stark reminder that even in the face of immense darkness, the light of justice, ignited by courageous hearts, can and will prevail. As David and Sarah walked out of the courthouse hand in hand, the warm summer sun bathed them in a golden glow. The cheers of the crowd, a vibrant tapestry of voices chanting "Justice for Sarah," filled the air, a melody far sweeter than any carnival music. They weren't just leaving a building, they were stepping into a new chapter, not as victims, but as advocates, their hearts burning with a renewed sense of purpose. The journey had been arduous, a relentless fight against not just two misguided officers, but against the insidious prejudice and unchecked power that permeated this system. Sarah, once forced to endure public humiliation, now stood tall, her spirit unyielding, a beacon of resilience. David, the unwavering protector, had not just defended his family, but had bravely held a mirror to a societal ill. daring it to reflect its own ugly truth. This verdict, David's voice, though tired, carried a profound resonance as he addressed the cheering crowd, is not just a victory for us. It's a testament to what happens when we refuse to be silenced, when we, as a community, stand together and demand accountability. This is why people should never give up on the fight for justice. Sarah, tears glistening in her eyes, squeezed David's hand. Every person deserves to be seen, to be respected, to be treated with dignity, she added, her voice clear and strong. No one should ever have to prove their worth or their pain, especially to those sworn to protect them. This fight is for every Black woman, every person with a disability, every individual who has ever felt invisible or unheard. Leo, nestled securely between his parents, looked up at them, his eyes wide with understanding beyond his years. "Daddy, we helped make the mean man go away," he whispered, a newfound confidence in his voice. Sarah knelt, pulling him into a gentle embrace. "Yes, sweet boy," she murmured, "and we'll keep helping so no one has to be scared anymore." Their story, born from a day of supposed joy turned nightmare, had blossomed into something more profound, a powerful reminder that while the road to justice is often long and fraught with challenges, it is a journey worth taking. It's a testament to the unyielding spirit of those who, faced with adversity, choose to stand tall, raise their voices, and demand a better world. We hope Sarah and David's journey has resonated with you, awakened something within you, because their fight is a universal one. It's a call to action for every single one of us to question injustice, to stand with the vulnerable, and to challenge power when it oversteps its bounds. Your voice matters. If this story touched your heart, if it ignited a spark of determination within you, then please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't miss our next story, where we delve into another powerful moment of triumph against the odds. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to fight for what's right? Your experiences, your insights, fuel this community. Thank you for watching, and remember, the fight for dignity, for truth, for justice never truly ends. But with every step we take together, we bring a brighter future closer.